It's time for Tartarian Tales number 40, and this one is going to be a whopper, which deals with ancient Crimea, World War Crimea of the early 1900s, 30s and stuff, in modern war Crimea, because there is some action there now, or not, pretty much not. Ukraine and Russia are saying, no, we're not invading, but Biden seems to think they are, and war is coming, and our media says so, and they're pretty trustworthy, so everyone should be terrified. Just kidding. Absolutely not. That is a giant wag the dog. Who knows what's going to end up happening? All I know is I want to go back to ancient Crimea. You'll hear three different, pretty much, explanations of different time periods, and you'll realize that our generation and our parents and grandparents and great-parents were all in a mess. And before, things were so much better. And before that, they were even probably way better, that we can't even imagine. So good that they want to erase it so hard. They tried so hard and always try so hard to erase our beautiful past. But here we go. Let's start with the CIA. This page is pretty interesting. It says, what motivated the hostility of the Crimean Tartars toward Moscow during World War II? Was it nationalism and anti-Russian feeling or dissatisfaction with the policies of the Communist Party? A. In Crimea, there was both nationalistic and anti-Russian feeling, as well as dissatisfaction with the Communist Party. The nationalist party, Mila Firka, the People's Party, had been an illegal one. Why? And in the early 30s, that party was disclosed by the NKVD, and many people belonging to it were arrested and deported. The chairman of the Council of People's Commissars was involved and executed. In 1930 to 31, as a result of the collectivization of farms in Crimea, a disastrous famine was experienced, and many people starved to death. In 1930 to 31, wealthy Crimean Tatars were deported to Siberia, and many villages were deserted. Both anti-Russian feeling and hatred of communism resulted in a mass collaboration of the Tatars with the Germans. Now the Crimean Republic has been dissolved, and there seem to be no natives left there. 2. The Soviet press admitted on the 26th of June 46 that the Chechen-Ingish ASSR had been dissolved because many Chechens had collaborated with Germans. It stated that the Chechens were resettled but made no mention of the Ingish. Did the Ingish suffer the same fate as the Chechens? What motivated the hostility of these people toward Moscow? A. The roots of the hostility of the Chechens and Ingish toward Moscow are the same as those of the hostile Karachaveta and Balkars. Even though the Balkars and Turkic tribes and the Chechens and Ingish are of Caucasian origin, speaking a language closely related with Circassian and other Caucasian languages. The Ingish are less numerous than the Chechens. This may explain why their fate, which seemingly was the same as the Chechens, has not been discussed in Soviet papers, as there was a joint Chechen-Ingish republic. The dissolution of the republic affected the Ingish and the Chechens alike. As the Chechens have been resettled, the Ingish certainly underwent the same punishment, even though there is no definite information about them available. Terrible. It's just an absolute disgrace. What was allowed to happen and what happened, and just it's happening all the time probably, but I mean happened so soon ago. Just so many innocent people for what? So many beautiful people for what? For communism? Sick. And this other page that I found is even worse. The pre-war 1939 population of Crimea was between 800,000 and 1 million inhabitants. Of those, 55% were Tartars, 15% Ukrainians, 15% Great Russians, 7% Greeks, 3% Germans, 2% Jews, and the remaining 3% Armenians, Italians, and Albanians. After the reoccupation of Crimea by the Soviets in 1944, the following population transfers were effected. Now this stinks. A. Tartars, all were deported to Uzbek SSR and Kazakh SSR, which is what I searched for in the pictures that you're seeing above. B. Ukrainians and Great Russians, all who had contact with or collaborated with the Germans, were imprisoned. Some 2,500 to 3,000 were held at Vetlag camps. C. Greeks, all were deported to Uzbek and Kazakh SSRs. Germans, most had been deported early in 1940. In 1944, the rest were sent to Soviet labor camps. All Volga Germans ages 15 to 60 were mobilized in June 1941 and enrolled in labor battalions, while their families were deported to the Kazakh SSR in the Far East. About 1,500 to 2,000 Volga Germans forming two labor battalions were at number 12 Vetlag camp during 1942 to 43. In 46, an order was issued declaring these Germans as war prisoners. Source states the Germans were obliged to sign statements indicating they would willingly settle in the area of the Vetlag camps. All signed and were given permission to bring their families to the area. Source says Volga Germans were fed better than other laborers. Interesting. E. Jews. No deportations were reported. F. Armenians, Italians, and Albanians. These groups were treated in the same manner as were the Germans. 3. There was no general deportation of the Don and Terek Cossacks. However, nearly 2,000 were charged with being collaborators and were sent to labor camps, some after being tried, others without trials. In some cases, trials were held later at the camps, and some Cossacks were set free. I wonder what the excuse was for the camps and how they did all this. If it's just war, or would they try other tactics like they are trying today? 5. This part stinks. The present population, which I believe is in the late 40s as this was being written, of the Dagestan ASSR is estimated at from 800,000 to 1 million. It is inhabited by 20 to 25 ethnic groups now, the most important of which include Davlini, they're pretty much about 400,000 Muslims of the Caucasian race, 200,000 Muslims of the Mongolian race, 65,000 Muslims of the Mongolian race, 30,000 Jews still, 50,000 Muslims and more, Persians, Turks, and more. So why is this stuff barely ever talked about when so many other things and aspects of our history are just constantly talked about ad nauseum? And these people are just not even mentioned. They're intentionally almost erased from history in a kind of, way that a lot of the world leaders know about this. People that know and write the information know about this stuff. Like, they clearly have access to the information we don't, the stuff they keep from us. And so we don't know, but the evils that came and happened at this time by the communists are just absolutely atrocious. And what is this force that's able to come? Like, where did this come from? How did this rise from nothing? It's almost like they're another race of soldiers from beyond somewhere that just came and just started ruining everything. And it's still going, and it really is sick. And so that's the first part of our travels. So many people displaced, so many people hardship, not thought about, not talked about. So many people just, it's really horrendous. This stuff has to end. Humanity has to get beyond all this, and the people that do this evil just must be stopped. So now let's go back to what seems like the glory, magical days from this incredible book, which I will include the links to below, Travels in Tartary and whatnot. So much good stuff, but there's a particular chapter called Yalta and the Crimean Tartars. Again, this is that same land that is happening now with all of this craziness happening now. So here, I'll put the books in succession, then I'm going to show a bunch of pictures and talk about some stuff. So here we go. It begins with a poem. And still the Tartar loves the shores, the Euxine washes and deplores the glories of his race gone by. And often when the east winds sigh, the winds that warm from Asia blow, he dreams 'tis the murmur of hosts that go forth with Genghis and Timur strong, and his dark eyes flash, and he hears the song of the victors sung where the tent lines glisten, while couched on carpets Bokhara wove for the chiefs that over their pastures rove. The Khan and his jeweled ladies listen. But the wind goes by, and a roll of drums from the fort of the conquering Russian comes, and their ships sail over the Euxine's foam, and their bells ring clear from tower and dome. It was written in fate's decree, he cries, Allah requite us in paradise. Wow. Okay, so now we're going to take a different turn, and here is an excellent story of some travels in the Crimean Tartar from a while ago. The glory days. Kind of. But better than now. Kind of. A rosy sunrise flushed the sea as we anchored in the Bay of Yalta. Precipitous wooded mountains circle it round, and the town, beginning at the water's edge, climbs a little way up the slope. It would be a lovely spot anywhere upon earth, but after the steppe, it is paradise. No wonder the imperial family take the long journey from the cold marshes of St. Petersburg to look upon such scenes and breathe such air. Small boats conveyed the passengers ashore, and as we stepped onto the wharf we saw the soldiers, already disembarked, sitting and standing in groups on the beach, cleaning their guns and adjusting their uniforms preparatory to entering the royal grounds. As the summer residence of the Tsar, a favorite bathing place, in the center of traffic in Crimean wine, Yalta is important. During the warm season it is thronged with visitors, and it was with some trouble that we obtained rooms at the Hotel de Yalta, a rambling old house built round an interior court, with bare floors and ancient furniture, yet delightful to us who, since leaving Kazan, had spent but a single night away from a boat, and that in the station house at Tsaritsia. One must descend the Volga in the dawn to appreciate the luxury of an ample apartment in a bed with 2 sheets and a white pillow cover. After breakfast we went in an open carriage with 3 horses abreast and a Tartar driver, across the heights above the town to the Tartar village of Yusuf, upon a hillside fronting the sea. Oh, the pleasure of that ride! The sky blue, as ours, with great fleecy clouds drifting over it, the balmy air lightly stirred by the breeze blowing to shore, below us the Euxine flashing in the sun, and about us the rich vegetation of this favored clime. Pines, larches, junipers, cypresses, oaks, and walnuts, vineyards on the southern exposures, and in the valleys the mulberry, the pomegranate, the olive, the laurel, the fig, and sometimes the orange, fields of tobacco, blackberry bushes laden with fruit, and the lavish clematis overrunning the walls. With a fine instinct for natural beauty, the Tartars have everywhere chosen the loveliest sites for their villages. This of Usaf clusters in the hollow and clings to the hillside overlooking the sea, while just beyond it precipitous cliffs rise from the water as if to guard the retreat, and the whole air is filled with the music of dashing wave and spray. It might have been transported from the slopes of Lebanon, so like was it to a Syrian town, with its small flat-roofed houses rising terrace above terrace, and its dogs that started up to bark at the strangers. Here, as elsewhere, the Tartars are a comely race, stout but symmetrical in form, the face broad, the eyes black or bluish-gray, with heavy lashes, and the nose often high and aquiline. The dress of the men was halfway between that of an Arab and a Russian. The women, shy but unveiled, wore wide trousers and loose upper garments. Some were barefoot, others had boots of yellow leather, and all let their hair hang to the waist in fine braids. Rarely have I seen prettier children, plump, grave little creatures in queer caps and frocks, peeping timidly round the corners of the houses as we approached, and then suddenly darting within. 2 groups were collected in an open balcony with an old man for a teacher, and from small books before them they chanted together with only less noise than those of Vambery heard in the bazaar of Bokhara. In an enclosure near one of the houses, several men and women were at work making cider, the women first pounding the apples in a large wooden trough, after which they were put into a rude press, while the juice was boiling down in a large shallow copper pan over a fire kindled on the ground, the picturesquely attired men and women busy with the fruit, the bright-eyed children playing about, the grain, the apricots, the nuts, the tobacco, the onions, and red peppers drying in and around every house, made a scene of rustic plenty and simplicity charming to behold. One of the young men offered us cider in a wooden bowl. Another brought a basket of hazelnuts, and we were free to pick the ripe, delicious berries of the great mulberry trees at the foot of the hill. It was a mode of existence that enchanted me. Tired of the artificial, complicated life of the West, and had I followed the impulse of the moment, I should have sworn allegiance to the Prophet and taken up my abode in Yusuf by the sea! Tartars make up the larger part of the population of the Crimea. The power of their haughty khans decreased until, nearly 100 years ago, Sahin, the last of the line, gave up his domains to the Russians, and for this was enticed to Constantinople by the indignant Turks, whose vassal he had been, and put to death. It was one of his luxurious predecessors who, when poisoned by a Greek at Bender, sent for his musicians that he might fall asleep pleasantly. And now their ancient palace, Seraglio of Gardens, stands like the Alhambra, a monument of splendor passed away. Many of their mosques are in ruins, while those families among them most rigidly attached to their faith and their traditions have sought on Turkish soil freedom from Christian rule. Yet those who remain seem content and light-hearted. Their bearing is easy and independent, and with the belief that all events are decreed, they resign themselves to their fate. Doubtless, in an extreme of trial and mortification, they are consoled by that saying of Muhammad, so grateful to their fierce kindred, the Turkomans, quote, This world is a prison for believers and a paradise for unbelievers. Quote, as a race, they take life sunnily, and with their primitive habits and their trust in destiny, are disposed to idleness. Yet they readily endure fatigue and are courageous and true-hearted. They have some manufactures of felts and camel's hair cloth, but most of them are agriculturists or shepherds. Their land is irrigated and often well tilled, and on the steppes they have large herds of sheep and cattle, and by their nomadic instinct can find their way even when the trackless plains are white with snow. Their favorite food is mutton, roasted on skewers, with thin cakes of bread, after the fashion of the East. They delight in fruits and are enormous consumers of tobacco. Unavoidably, they will share the progress of the empire, and they will perhaps play an important part in its future. In the warm evening twilight, we walked about Yalta. The whole population, on foot or in carriages, thronged the streets, from the emperor, attired as a private gentleman, to the Tartars in black lambskin caps, ornamented with colored beads. The music of a military band came from the barracks, and laughter and the hum of voices were heard on every side. Here and there were booths for the sale of fruit, especially the grapes of the country, large white and purple pyramids, delicious for eating, but which have not yet produced superior wines. In the shops were piles of gray-blue lambskins from the plains near Kerch, a color peculiar to the Crimea, and said, though I know not how truly, to be owing to a plant upon which the sheep feed. Wow. The varied crowd, the soft air, the mountains, and the sea won us to prolong our stroll till the pines were dim against the horizon and day had given place to stars. Then we turned back to the hotel in company with a group of Tartars sauntering homewards, for, like all Mohammedans, they keep early hours, and the last person we saw on the promenade was a Georgian prince, looking strikingly handsome in an embroidered white tunic and a cap of snowy lambskin, which he raised in graceful recognition as we passed him by. What an incredible difference time can make. And, only the writings we know of are still missing that ancient era and speak of ancient furniture and ancient things. And it just keeps going down a different path. And I was impressed that this reading ended up having a section where they talked about the Tartars giving way to the Russians and basically surrendering them to the last in line at some point that happened. So how did this Russian force build the way it did and able to keep going? Communism, who, ugh. It seems inhuman, that a group of humans could just conquer and be so disgraceful to people, and how the wealthy and all these buildings, all these people that were at one point occupying these buildings in harmony, getting from growing together and being a community together and having health be an important thing. Musicians, for when people was going to pass away, the ancient furniture they're utilizing, it still alludes to an even deeper time, but the time that we were just reading about was just incredible in comparison to now and in the 1930s, when they probably had that still probably perpetuating, and then this force just came and wiped it out with just such a regard for any type of humanity. It's really sad that it's even possible. Humanity and all of species of life were destined for a world that just didn't have nanobots coming from the sky, or energy weapons being unleashed upon peaceful protesters, or plagues being just sent out and harvested in labs to spread. It's what? We were all meant to live and be able to do what we wanted, grow our own food, live happy, play music, create what we want. All these ancient Renaissance pictures are all people that were, it appears that they were living in a world where things were free, people were able to explore themselves, and that was the ultimate purpose of humanity. And that's what it should be. It's stuff so much more important than working for someone else in a job you don't like for your entire life, your entire precious life, which could be spent dancing, singing, hanging with friends, going to amazing places, feeling energy, getting free energy, loving, doing everything, creating, doing beautiful things, building things, working on things impressively, being harmonized with each other, having interactions that are perfect. This force that we've seen come has just been eradicating that intentionally and strategically. from the world and trying to take over it by like doing all these ridiculous methods. And that's what we're seeing now. It's like, why a war in Crimea? Who is not one person in America wants a war with Crimea? Not one citizen. There isn't one. There's no point. No one in Crimea probably wants one either. And they're like, what the heck is going on? And Russia's like, what? Why is the media doing this? They know that the media is doing it. They've been calling them out, and that is what needs to be taken down. But it's insane that things could even get to any type of escalation because of someone that had no purpose gaining the power that they did. A country like America should never be run by an unelected leader, and it is, so that has to change. And Putin is embarrassing him to the point of no return by granting independence to 2 separate areas in the Crimea region. Good for him. The people there do not deserve to be suffering from the West's nonsense. No one does. We need to end it all and get truth running this world. So hopefully the divine powers of good can do whatever it takes to get this place back on track, because something's going on. And it's kind of interesting that John Levy and a ton of his commenters, and in his latest video, and there's a guy Howdy Mikowski, his latest video, and a lot of his fans commenting on their having a weird energetic shift of some sort and experiencing the normal everyday things becoming tougher and tougher, and almost kind of, taking on a new, like almost like something's happening to reality. And I definitely want to put my hat in there and say that it seems like something weird is going on. I completely agree. Before I even saw their videos talking about it, I was wondering if others had been thinking about it, because it's immensely strong. I put up a post about the full moon, thought maybe that was it, but hope it's not 5G. If it is, we're in trouble. But it seems like kind of a transition period to me. It seems like something has to be battled through in order, almost like the way a solstice kind of gets, where the winter kind of, sometimes things get intense towards the winter solstice and then they release themselves, or but as the light comes back. But it seems like something like that, but of a different caliber. It's very interesting. It seems possible to navigate and to conquer, but it seems like something definitely changed. And I wonder if it's the people that are waking up, because people are waking up, and we have to push them even further. Like, look at just this. I wanted to include this picture at the end, because it just shows the time putting into something and the effort that people put into something, and the way that they did this in all throughout time is just the way that people have to get back to. Because I can tell you from experience, it is the most incredible feeling to have a work of art, or to create something that you've spent a lot of time, a lot of thought, and you've poured your heart and soul into, and you make it as perfect as you can get it, and then you kind of release it to the world. And something is amazing about it. The process is so incredible. It's beyond words. I've always noticed this. I've always taken note of it. I've called it the zone, called it so many different things, but it is a divine experience, and I encourage everyone to do it. And people are there. At one point in time, our buildings were like this. Every one of those tiled buildings were painted in the Muslim communities and things like that. Those colors that you see in some places were everywhere. The Egyptians, those things were colored unbelievable. Mayan, unbelievable. Everything was full-blown color. As now they try to make our world grayer and grayer, try to convince people that gray, have a gray, nice white house, this industrial gray, it's awesome. No, we need to get back to full-blown color. We need to color our world. Something is happening. We must combat it with positivity and love and just unity, full-blown unity like no one's ever seen before. And assuming this energetic change isn't some artificial thing trying to kill us, I'm going to assume that it's some kind of amazing divine power that's going on, because a lot of people are feeling it. They're thinking either good or bad things. It's either way, it's intense. My animals, our pets, are feeling it. They've never been the way they are this past couple of weeks. So it's something's going on, and we're going to get through it. And I have a feeling it's almost us breaking out of our cocoon, getting ready to become butterflies as a world, getting rid of the evil forever. I don't know about you all, but I want to see what we as a human species are made of when we can all get together. When people that are just, even you're violent, if someone who's violent right now, drop your gun, hug someone, smoke a joint, drink a beer, enjoy nature. Everybody just get off the train of negativity and get right onto the positive world. And we need to fix the energetic situation that's happening. So, bless you all, stay strong, and let's awaken everyone.